Hello, fellow explorers of knowledge, and welcome back to the channel. When you hear the words theory of evolution, one name immediately springs to mind: Charles Darwin. His monumental book, On the Origin of Species, is rightfully hailed as one of the most important scientific works ever written. But what if I told you that the history we all know is incomplete? What if I told you that thousands of miles away, another brilliant, self-taught naturalist, battling disease, financial hardship, and the dangers of the world's most remote jungles, independently conceived the very same theory? This is the story of the other Darwin, the man whose flash of genius in a malarial fever sent a shockwave to the heart of the scientific establishment and forced Darwin's hand. Today, we pull back the curtain of history to reveal the incredible, overlooked story of Alfred Russel Wallace, the unsung co-architect of evolution. Our story doesn't begin in the hallowed halls of Cambridge or with the backing of a wealthy family. It begins with a man of humble means, born in Wales in 1823. Alfred Russel Wallace didn't have the privileges of Darwin. He had to leave school at 14 to work as a surveyor with his brother. But from a young age, he possessed an insatiable curiosity for the natural world, a passion he fueled by devouring books at local mechanics institutes. He was a collector, a beetle enthusiast, and a voracious reader of travelogues and scientific papers. It was a book called Lyell that first ignited his belief that species were not fixed, that they could change or evolve over time. The question was, how? To find the answer and to make a living, Wallace embarked on a journey that would test the limits of human endurance. In 1848, alongside his friend Henry Walter Bates, he set sail for the Amazon rainforest. For 4 years, he braved treacherous rivers, relentless insects, and debilitating diseases, all while meticulously collecting thousands of specimens of birds, butterflies, and beetles, many of which were entirely new to science. He wasn't just collecting, he was observing, questioning everything. He noticed how geographical barriers, like major rivers, seemed to act as boundaries for different species. The seeds of a great idea were being planted. But this adventure ended in utter tragedy. On his return voyage in 1852, his ship, the Erie, caught fire and sank in the middle of the Atlantic. Wallace lost everything. His entire private collection, his notes, his drawings, 4 years of perilous work gone, consumed by fire and water. He and the crew drifted in an open boat for 10 days before being rescued. For many, this would have been the end, but for Wallace, it was merely a devastating setback. Just 2 years later, in 1854, he was off again, this time to the other side of the world, the Malay archipelago, what we now know as Indonesia and Malaysia. This would become the defining journey of his life. For 8 years, he traveled over 14,000 miles, hopping between countless islands, collecting a staggering 125,600 specimens, including more than 1,000 species new to science. It wasn't just collecting, he was observing, questioning everything. He noticed how geographical barriers, like major rivers, seemed to act as boundaries for different species. The seeds of a great idea were being planted. But this adventure ended in utter tragedy. On his return voyage in 1852, his ship, the Erie, caught fire and sank in the middle of the Atlantic. Wallace lost everything, his entire private collection, his notes, his drawings, 4 years of perilous work gone, consumed by fire and water. He and the crew drifted in an open boat for 10 days before being rescued. For many, this would have been the end. But for Wallace, it was merely a devastating setback. Just 2 years later, in 1854, he was off again, this time to the other side of the world, the Malay archipelago, what we now know as Indonesia and Malaysia. This would become the defining journey of his life. For 8 years, he traveled over 14,000 miles, hopping between countless islands, collecting a staggering 125,600 specimens, including more than 1,000 species new to science. It was here, amidst the unparalleled biodiversity of these islands, that the puzzle pieces of evolution began to click into place. He observed subtle variations between animals on neighboring islands. He saw how species were perfectly adapted to their specific environments. He was living inside a giant natural laboratory for evolution. The pivotal moment, the flash of genius that would change biology forever, came in February 1858 on the small island of Ternate. Wallace was suffering from a severe bout of malarial fever. In between debilitating fits of fever and chills, his mind, unburdened by daily tasks, began to race. He recalled the work of the economist Thomas Malthus, who had argued that human populations always grow faster than their food supply, leading to inevitable checks like famine and disease. Wallace had a sudden epiphany. What if this principle applied to all of nature? He thought about the immense reproductive capacity of all living things. Every species produces more offspring than can possibly survive. He also knew from his extensive fieldwork that individuals within a species vary. So, what decided which ones survived and which ones perished? It must be that any slight variation that gave an individual an edge, better camouflage, a sharper beak, faster speed, would make it more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass that advantageous trait on to its offspring. Unfit variations would be filtered out. Over vast stretches of time, this process would lead to the development of new species, perfectly adapted to their environment. It was natural selection. In a feverish haze, he had solved the mystery. Excited beyond measure, Wallace immediately wrote down his ideas in a 20-page essay titled "On the Tendency of Varieties to Depart Indefinitely from the Original Type." Now he had to share it. He thought of the one person he knew who was a respected authority on the subject of species transmutation, Charles Darwin. Wallace had corresponded with him before. He packaged his essay and sent it off with a letter, asking Darwin, if he thought it worthy, to pass it along to the eminent geologist Charles Lyell. He had no idea he had just lit a fuse under the most secret, long-gesting project in the history of science. When the package arrived at Down House in England, Darwin was thunderstruck. He read Wallace's essay and his blood ran cold. It was a perfect, concise summary of the theory he had been secretly developing for 2 decades. "I never saw a more striking coincidence," he wrote to Lyell. "If Wallace had my MS sketch written out in 1842, he could not have made a better short abstract. Even his terms now stand as heads of my chapters." Darwin was in despair. He felt his life's work, his priority, was about to be scooped. But his friends, Lyell and the botanist Joseph Hooker, devised a plan. On July 1, 1858, at a meeting of the Linnean Society of London, they presented a joint paper, an unpublished essay by Darwin from 1844, a letter Darwin had written to an American botanist in 1857, and finally, Wallace's complete essay from Ternate. It was a compromise to ensure both men received credit, though the order of presentation subtly established Darwin's priority. Ironically, neither man was present. Wallace was still in the Malaya archipelago, and Darwin was at home mourning the recent death of his infant son from scarlet fever. The presentation itself caused little stir at the time, but it spurred Darwin to publish a condensed version of his big book the following year. That book was The Origin of Species, and it was this book, with its mountain of evidence, that truly set the world on fire. So why did Wallace fade into Darwin's shadow? The reasons are complex. Darwin had the 20-year head start, the wealth of evidence, and the social status within the scientific elite. Wallace was a man of modest means, an outsider who spent years far from the centers of power in London. But perhaps the biggest factor was Wallace's own character. He was a man of incredible humility and generosity. He was thrilled to have his ideas presented alongside Darwin's, a man he deeply admired. He always referred to the theory as Darwinism and saw himself as a junior partner in the discovery. But to remember Wallace only for this is to do him a great disservice. His other contributions are monumental. He is, without question, the father of biogeography. While in the Malay archipelago, he identified a stark, invisible boundary line now known as the Wallace Line that separates the fauna of Asia from that of Australia. To the west of the line, you find animals like tigers and monkeys. To the east, you find marsupials like kangaroos and cuscuses, despite the islands being geographically close. It was a profound insight into how life is distributed across the planet. He also pioneered the concept of aposematism, or warning coloration, the idea that brightly colored animals, like poison dart frogs or monarch butterflies, evolve their vibrant hues to advertise to predators that they are dangerous or distasteful. He was a thinker of incredible breadth, writing on everything from spiritualism to social justice. Alfred Russel Wallace was not a rival to Darwin, but a brilliant, independent co-discoverer. He was a testament to the power of observation, resilience, and pure intellectual curiosity. His story reminds us that scientific breakthroughs are often not a singular event, but a convergence of ideas, and that history doesn't always give credit where it is equally due. He is a true titan of science who deserves to stand in the spotlight, not in the shadow. What do you think? Did you know about Alfred Russel Wallace's incredible story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden corners of science history, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next exploration of the unsung heroes and forgotten stories of science. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.